All right, next is Personnel Advisory Council.
So we worked pretty diligently on a couple things we've been working on in the Personnel Advisory Council, putting some things in place that just aren't in place or haven't been in place or updated. It's kind of like similar to with the fixed assets. So you had a confidential document that has a yellow cover sheet. That's just for your reference as we begin to look at position control and position management related to reduction in force or employee expenses. We had that. I know there were 1 or 2 questions submitted on that. Just some of the bookkeeping not having previous years entered into the system. That's why one column focuses on just base salary changes, and then the most current year focuses on salary plus stipends and some of those things. So as we continue to move forward, it will match the 11-12 year in that. The other thing that we have been working on, and this is a sheet that we've worked on with the Personnel Committee, and Mr. Moon and I spent more time on this again last week, and Gary via phone conference, we're working on this. You have a sheet that has some Excel tables on it, and it's kind of color coded. And Mary Ann will put it up there as well. This just gives you the historicals. It gives you some historical perspective.
Leave it so.
And current perspective, as well as possible future things. So historically, if you start to the far left, it just explains like an FTE in regards to a teacher. They teach 5 classes. We have a 7-period day. So they teach 5 classes. They have 2 periods where are prep periods, and they get a 26-minute lunch. A 0.1 class in staffing is equal to a semester class. A 0.2 class is equal to a year-long class. So fine arts survey would be on a teacher schedule as a 0.1, and then they would have to teach something that second semester. A class like English that goes for 2 semesters, it counts as a 0.2 of their teaching load. So the next chart to your right under the historical info is just student scenarios. At the minimum, our board policy says a student has to take 5 credits to be considered a full-time student at RB. Really what a student would need to take in a school year is 5.5 credits, which for FTE purposes comes out to about 1.1 FTE. The max credits a student would earn if they took 5.5 credits for 4 years would be 22 credits, and that is our graduation requirement. So then the plus minus column shows that it's even. And Marianne, I don't know if you could bring the camera down a little bit more on that to zoom it in to make it a little bigger. And then underneath that, like a student B, if they take 6 courses for their 4 years, it's on the average, it's about 1.2 teacher. Now what I mean by 1.2 teacher is that student's taking 6 classes, so it's 1.2 sections for a teacher. Obviously it's not 1 teacher per student. But that student taking 6 classes a year could earn 24 credits over 4 years, which would be a positive 2 over graduation requirements. Student C, which would be 7 credits, which is about a 1.4, because now that's 2 extra classes. That student, if they took 7 credits for 4 years, can earn a total of 28 credits, which is 6 more than the required graduation requirements, which is almost like another full year of high school. So it's almost like completing 5 years of high school in a 4-year period of time, which is very good academically, but we do have to endure those costs. And then scenario D, which is fairly common for a large population of our students, is 1.2 to 1.4, where they take some semesters of 7 classes and some semesters of 6 classes.
I just put 6/7.
Yeah, I know. They turned it to June. Just recognize that. Good old Excel.
He did it.
If you look then to the right under the historicals, I wanted to provide you a breakout of, okay, well, over the last 2 years, what have graduates earned? So in 2010, we had 350 graduates. 89, or about 25%, were between 0 credits and 24 credits, which is anywhere from 5 to 6 classes a year. Then we had 39%, or 138, had 24 to 26 credits. And then over 26 or more we had 35%. And then I broke it down even further below that of how many had 24, 25, 26, 27, 28. I think the thing you need to look at is basically 35% of the graduates of 2010 had at least 2 semesters where they had 3 or 4 semesters where they had 7 classes, and then they had a couple where they had 6, the combination. If you look at 2011, 313 graduates, and if you just to not be repetitive, if you look down at that bottom chart that breaks it down by credits, if I'm looking at my math right, that should be 34 and 8, about 42% had 26 or more credits for graduation. So it's just something we need to be aware of, is the number of classes and opportunities we're allowing students to take academically. That's a great practice to have. Fiscally, you have to pay for the teachers to be in those classes. So it's just something for us to consider. What I'd like to show you now is in the next column, or the next table that says current. This is our current enrollment, and there's about 16 students that are outplacement, so that will alter the numbers a little bit. Our current enrollment for first semester, current enrollment for second semester, the number of students signed up for 5 classes, 6 classes, and 7 classes. So as you can see, in both semesters, over 50% of the population were signed up for 7 classes. Now, whether or not that will change next year with allowing seniors to have an early dismissal, I will not know, but our projections are very similar to our projections based on the PMA numbers and the numbers that Tim ran are 1430 for next year. So if you look at that 1439 at the second semester, we're pretty similar. If we come out to similar data, you know, you have 850 students that are taking 7 classes. Next to that is our current FTE. We are employing right now 95.5 certified staff, and of that is 6.
Kevin?
Yeah.
Could we just slow down a sec? I mean, this is great info, it's something, but you're going too fast, for
Okay.
me at least.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
but I'm worried about, what I wanted to kind of show you something is kind of tell a story first and then
Okay,
go
I'm
back.
sorry, all right, I don't want to cut
Plunge into
you
the
off.
philosophical.
Yeah, because we went through this together as a,
But these percentages are the same for current from 2010, 2011. They're roughly the same.
No, 7% more.
7% it increased in 2011, and I got to imagine it's going to increase this year with our graduating class because we had a closed campus. And as you can see, 824, 849 took 7 classes just this year. So if they followed a similar pattern throughout their 4 years, it could increase in the number of kids that took 7, you know, had over 26 credits at graduation.
Okay.
So our current FTEs, and this is where it can somewhat get confusing. We have 95.5 FTEs, but what I broke down below that are all the employees that are not necessarily assigned class sizes. You know, we have counselors in there, social workers. The special ed are in classes, but we do a lot of, if not all of, co-taught classes. So what I wanted to say out there, it's hard to say, hey, we're going to have special ed class sizes at 30 to 1 because we know that's not federally legal. So I took them out of there, and you know, to show how much is department share release periods, 2.8, interventions 0.4, interventions 0.4, academic support. So out of the 95.5, we have about 23.9 certified staff members that are, you know, unique or required, but yet unique to class sizes.
And of those if you have to take the 8.8, because you need those for special.
Yeah, I think it's best to keep them out of there as we look at class sizes.
So it'll be down to 15.1.
Right. So then what I did to your right, and the most important chart to your right in that yellow is the yellow box. I took our current population. We have 573 kids with 6 classes, and we have 849 with 7 classes. You multiply them by the number of seats or kids, you know, 6 times the 573, 34, 38. The 7 times 849, and then I broke it down by the number of FTEs that we would need to cover those classes to try to come up with our current number of 95.5 minus the 23.9. So I know you have like a column that says average class size, then you have FTE, then you have required. So if you think about it, we need about 26.4 certified staff members for those kids with 6 classes. We need about 45.7 for those students with 7 classes. And if you added those up and minus the, or added those up plus the 23.9 that we know are counselors' interventions that we currently have in place, that came up to about 96.1. So that means roughly we have an average class size right now with our current population and our current staff of about 26:1. It's probably closer to about 25.89 or something of that nature, but we're off by only a 0.6 or a half a teacher. So then the final thing on the bottom would be, okay, as we begin to look at this for next year, we can't tonight give you a formal, hey, this is what class sizes should be, this is what our numbers are coming in and based on what kids are interested in when they signed up, but I wanted to just kind of give you a little bit of information before we start getting into that in February. If you look below, there's some recommendations of some things we could possibly change or alter, so that that required number, instead of being at 23.9, would be 20.2. Now, obviously, this is just a draft, but that would be some reductions in certified FTE. And then if you look to the chart to the right, especially the first one, if we kept it as is and allowed kids to take 6 or 7 classes as they choose, and we kept it tight to a 30:1 class size, or approximately 30:1 class size, that would be a reduction of about 12.8 teachers. And that would be close to about $1.1 million in reduction in certified staff. Now, obviously there's some fluctuation in there. If we choose not to replace the retired FTEs that already have put in for early retirement, we can take the 3 off the top, so that would be more like 9.8. But just gives you an idea. The key to this kind of whole scenario is, if you're going to, the thing we need to remember is the 2 key components here are class sizes and credits. The number of classes that you allow students to take will drive FTEs, and then the size of those classes will drive FTEs. So if we want to keep RB competitive, as well as the students competitive in the college selection process and what we're doing academically, then we have to keep an eye on class sizes and staffing for those classes, so that we can monitor our cost and our deficit in regards to that. If the board decides that, hey, class sizes, we want them to be lower so there's more interventions and one-on-one time, then we would definitely have to take a look at class offerings, because those are the 2 biggest things that would have to give in order for us to begin to attack the deficit next year, which is anywhere from 1.5 to 2 million, which we were discussing. So I know I threw a lot of information out there, but I just kind of wanted to give you some things to look at of historically, currently, as we move into this in February.
So this sheet shows the keeping as much opportunity for the student out there, meaning if you want to go and take 28 credits to graduate, so giving them all the opportunity, you're going to have to give it up in average class sizes.
Absolutely.
You didn't do any analysis to say, okay, let's scale back the offerings and say that we're going to restrict students to only 26 or 24, at which point our average class size could be X. You didn't look at it from that. You said, let's keep the opportunity available for them, but recognize you're going to have to then have bigger classes.
The board can, yes.
But don't they go together?
Well, there's 2 things. Let me stick to Gary's question first. The board can, as we begin to put together some plans and bring together numbers to the board based on what we see once the kids have signed up for classes, the board will have to direct us on how they want us to pursue this a little bit. We'll give you our recommendations or our rationale, but to go and look at impacting credits that kids can take in February to a March deadline is probably not the best practice. You have, nowadays with the selection process for colleges being pretty competitive, you already have students that are in their starting their sophomore year next year. They're on a 4-year plan to be achieving a certain amount of credits to get into a certain university or aspire to get into a certain grade of university. So if we were going to take a look at credits, without having any information in front of you, the first recommendation that I would make as your superintendent is that's something we should look at for next year's budget and planning. We would need a year to be with administration from the building, probably some board members from the curriculum committee,
And starting with that freshman class?
Yeah, we would need to, at the most we could do is look at this current year's incoming freshman class.
Right.
But really, you would want to say, let's plan this out, so when we register next year's freshmen
Right.
in the winter of 2012-13, then we could, hey, we have to put an impact on credits because our revenues still haven't increases. But I think right now, we take a hard look at our class sizes, and there'll be a level between the building and the board, and where Pam and I will sit and look at classes that are below 30, even some of those classes that are below 20 based on board policy, and we're going to have to take a real hard look at what we offer, because every class that we offer below 30 or 28, within a variance of plus or minus 2 doesn't offset this too much. When you start getting below that, that starts altering the class sizes of those other classes or the number of FTEs. So I just wanted to kind of
It's a good analysis.
give you some information first, that's all.
But I asked if they go together, and you said, no, the end is they go together. If 25 kids apply, sign up for a class, and you're telling them there has to be 30, we don't offer the class, is what you're saying.
We would have to look at that.
So they do very closely go together, don't they?
Yeah.
I mean, you don't really, if that's what you're going to look at. And how do we, I'm a little concerned, I thought about this after, we passed a policy to say, if a class size is under 20, the board has to approve it. But what about the other end? I mean, we've got gym classes with 60 kids in them.
Right. So what was
That almost seems unsafe to me.
So here's what I put in place as the superintendent. We put in some staffing guidelines this year to prevent that.
Okay.
So what I did is I gave the task to each department chair that they had lab classes have to be at a 26-to-1 ratio, and that's pretty much just science. All other classes have to be at 30-to-1. PE, band, and music have to be at 40-to-1, plus or minus 2 in all those areas. So we shouldn't get to a PE class that has 65.
For next year.
Right. That PE class at the max should be 42, 44 max, or 36 or 38. You get what I'm saying? So I put in some parameters and some staffing guidelines. That was one of the reasons why I had Pam and her staff bump up registration, is because I think we're going to need to really study these numbers. This will be the first time kind of through this process. Although Pam did put some good stuff in place last year to help monitor it, but we're going to even have to go in deeper to the numbers to see if we're getting department averages of close to 30-to-1. And we set up some guidelines to the department chairs of, if you have a class that's unique to your curriculum or is a capstone class, like this year we didn't run that Calc BC, but yet we want kids to take a 4th year of math. If you have some of those unique classes to a department that cannot fulfill the staffing, they have to prepare their teachers and the department that we're going to go a little higher in all the other classes to make sure that we get to our department average of 30-to-1. So I hope that, we want the teachers and the department chairs to help us drive to those decisions of recognizing classes that are important. So if they're below 30-to-1 or, floating on a level of, consolidation where we would collapse it, they would have to understand that some other classes are going to have to take the hit and increase that. And if I'm not mistaken, Pam, you could speak to this. I think you're already doing that in some departments where they have higher class sizes over 30.
Right, those decisions were made last year when we cut the FTE. We had those philosophical decisions, if it was the at-risk learners, the academically at-risk learners, keeping those classes smaller and having the honors level be a little bit higher, and the teachers are talking about that, and then the middle average level kids, trying to keep them somewhat in the middle so you can give them a little bit more help and hands-on. So those decisions were made this year, but we have to even go further with that if we're trying to get to that overall 30-to-1 ratio in the department. So. And classes, and we discussed this a little bit, they don't always break evenly. You need 2 sections of it. The numbers are, you have 50 kids sign up. it's 25 and 25, you can't keep them all in one class, what are you gonna do? So those are the realities in a smaller school when you don't have so many sections of a course that you don't always get the pretty breaks, and that kind of forces some of the other numbers higher in the other classes.
That's why we're gonna look more at department averages to start, so that they have fluctuation within their departments, to have, you know, different class sizes to an extent, but still driving towards the goal of getting a 30 to 1 and in a classroom setting, 26 in a lab setting. And the 26 we have to use just because that's the number of lab stations, and we also have to watch what safety in regards to 2 points of egress, and then with some of the gases and equipment. So those are some of the numbers that we've had put in place.
This is a good analysis for, basis for discussion coming up in the next month. I really appreciate with it. Plus, I think also, which Kevin didn't mention in the super, I think the road show with us, what I call our road show, going to the area schools has helped to identify
Feeders? Yeah.
our feeder schools. So.
Okay, I have a problem. And,
Okay.
I speak for a lot of people watching this on TV.
Okay.
This is setting us up for failure. This is basically saying, you want your kids to have 30 kids per class, or you don't. Now, who's gonna agree to that? There's some low-hanging fruit at this school in terms of class offerings that we have to get rid of to make it easier.
Sure.
I know what you're saying. You don't want to like massively change the graduation requirements, but you know, think of what you did, you know, with sports. We sort of focused on, you made your recommendations, let's get rid of this, let's keep this. I think we need to start doing that now for this curriculum. Not to replace this, but we need to bring that in, I think,
Right.
to make it easier.
So I think, John, that touches on the whole thing. I think we do need to put a committee together. I just don't think we can make a true informed decision on changing the curriculum. And really, you can only implement that for next year's incoming
But
freshmen.
I'm not saying change the curriculum. I mean, I think you can change. You can like get rid of some classes here. You can.
That will, I think I know where you're going. That's gonna kind of happen.
What's that?
He's going to say with registration.
That's gonna kind of
It's
happen
gonna
by
happen by
itself.
itself.
Because if the days of, you know, right now we have, as Pam presented that report to the board, we had like the 19 classes that were below 20. The only ones that I would bring forward for the board to even consider are the ones that would be absolutely essential, like a fourth year of a math class or a capstone of a fine arts class that maybe, or a foreign language that we're in. But we wouldn't be running those classes. So what will happen is eventually some of those low class sizes, unique elective classes will kind of begin
people
to
are gonna
fall
vote,
off.
Right.
Yeah.
They vote with their choices, I
Correct.
understand.
We're kind of letting the
John,
kids pick the
And
class.
then I think the administration and his board's already set the groundwork in place with that, you know, now to bring it to the board, that 20 registration policy that we've implemented, to start looking at these so that we're aware of it, the community's aware of the size.
And that's the reason why we started the
Of these small
scheduling right
classes.
away, to bring it up to the front so we know where we're going at. Plus, the other key thing too, in this whole thing, Kevin, you brought up before, and Pam, is this balancing. All right, now I got 100 kids want to take this one type of class. How can I balance it effectively? And that may mean, instead of offering 2 classes the same period, maybe you offer 4 periods of a class at 25 or 30 each, whatever it is, if you can do that.
And then,
So, you know.
and this administration's also looking at the master schedule.
Yeah.
I think there was some glitch in the master scheduling
Okay.
last year that caused some
Probably
class size issues that,
an additional 19 or so classes were because of master schedule. So if you think about that in whole, you had close to 35, 40 classes that were probably lower.
Except John's right, there's at least a couple areas of the curriculum where we have had low class size, and one's the audiovisual, which we got a letter from the citizen about. There's 6 kids or something in a section because of the equipment. And, you know, so to say if it's under 20, and the other one is auto shop, and some of those classes where we don't offer a lot of those types of courses, of the vocational type courses, which somebody brought up at Hauser, where, you know, I don't know if that's his point, but we do have to think about if we have a limited vocational curriculum and only, you know, 15, 18 kids sign up, or we have equipment for a class and you can only have some amount of kids in it, of whether we're going to make a blanket statement, you know, there's only going to be
Right. I
20.
think that
There's a
would-
few areas that might fall
That's
out
where
of
you
that.
need to trust what I bring forward.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. let him bring forward with his recommendation, we can go from there.
I have one last question. Pam reported earlier that our Ds and Fs, and I think John was the one who asked, could we get a report, which was good, went from 14.3 10-year average to 10.6. We are, one of the numbers I'm seeing on here is the intervention and support, the idea of maybe cutting it out. It seems to me if you go to bigger class sizes, there's more of a need for intervention and support.
Right, so.
And I'm struggling a little with.
Let me answer that. So what was used this year that I would change for next year? If you look at that middle chart that talks about the additional or the required FTE inside 95.5.
Right.
We have a 0.4 for math interventions, 0.4 for reading interventions, a 1.4 academic support.
Right.
We paid those interventions release periods or full rate of pay for 0.2 or a fifth of their salary, which is very expensive. So like in the area of academic support, a year or two ago, they had 2.2 employees at the teacher aide or tutor rate of pay that cost the district about $75,000 to $100,000. And last year we did it for 1.4 FTE, so we reduced the number of people we had providing academic support, and we increased our expenditures by like 50 or 60,000. So what I told Tim and Pam to prepare for is we're going to need to go back to, hey, there's a lot of teachers out there or people with teaching certificates that are looking to be part-time or can't find a job, that we're going to make it more of an IMRF teacher's aide, we call it an academic tutor, and have them do interventions at an IMRF rate of pay than a full-time salary rate of pay. So that's why it's out of there, but I also know with RTI and with some of that, we need to provide those interventions. But I think we can increase the number of people we have doing those interventions for a lesser cost.
Okay.
So I didn't want to put it in here because that's tied to that whole 95.5 number.
Right.
And just to respond, Mr. Walsh, to your inquiry, it is having, the larger class sizes is having an impact on some of the discipline and some of the interventions that can be done, the differentiation you can do when you have more kids. Because as the kids talked about, the Student Association, we do have an open door policy and allowing students to take AP classes. Therefore, the range of skill ability within one class probably exceeds what would be common in another school where they're doing more gatekeeping and just letting kids in that have the highest scores possible. But as you see, our students do very well and achieve when they push up to that upper level, that level of rigor, which research would maintain is good for them. But it does require, with larger numbers, it's harder to get to all the kids and do all the differentiation. But, you know, there are some impacts of that. We're struggling. We're trying to give people, the teachers, strategies, and they're working really hard on that. But there are, the negative, the downsides to having the larger class sizes that they're starting that is starting to play out. I appreciate your, noting that. But the interventions, we are really committed to them. They're working for our kids. So we don't want to remove that level. We're just going to try and give it to them in a more cost-effective manner for next year.
Thank you.
And also more focused on the qualifications of the person delivering the academic support or the interventions. If we're picking people that have certificates out there, the core courses, rather than some of what we have this year.
Correct.
Okay, any other questions on, I think it was a very good plan. And this is good discussion.
I'm so confused. Sorry.
John, I'll sit down with you and I'll work with you.
No, Matt, you're not.
Okay.
We're going to talk about this. I still have a problem looking at this. This is the first time I've really had this data. And I think it'd be useful, if we're going to put a slide up on there, that we get this thing on the website so people can look at this thing at their leisure at home. If our graduation requirement is only 22, I mean, half of our kids are taking, am I right? Look at this, half of the students are at 27, 28?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I mean, is that?
You want to know why they are.
I would say closer to
23% last year, we're 27, 28.
Okay, the question is, should we really be doing that?
Well,
I'm looking at I want to think about this. This is a big picture. Our requirements are 22. Why are we spending all this money you know, to teach these kids all these extra classes. My question is, because we have limited resources, can we afford to do that?
So here's what you're gonna get in February. I had the director of guidance put together like 5 different scenarios of how a kid would be able to get into college with 24 credits, 26 credits, and 27 credits. And I don't think we should go into that just with time and some of the things we need to address tonight in closed session, but in February, that's why I wanted to get this to you now, so that in February, I'm gonna come back to you and say, well, here's how a kid would get into a Northwestern or an Ivy League school if we had to put a cap on their credits. And we have to show you that, because what happens is you begin to limit credits with our current graduation requirements, and this is why I say I think a study may need to be done with a committee, with school personnel, board, community, is because you begin to limit then what an RB graduate looks like. For a kid to then be competitive to go to a highly selective university where he or she would need 4 years of a foreign language, they would probably have to sacrifice any years of fine arts. So I mean, there's things, as you begin to cap credits earned, you begin to cap what a graduate looks like. And then you start forcing, you know, kids that want to be in the band for 4 years realize, well, I can only, you know, if I only can get 2 PE waivers, I can only be in the band for 2 years because I need 4 years of Spanish to get into this college. So now what you start doing is you put a cap on how those kids can do it. So what I asked the guidance director to do is say, hey, how would a kid with 7 classes get into college? How would it get into a highly selective college?
So when do we?
You'll get that in February.
You've sold me, okay?
Okay.
Because that's, you know, if we're going to ask the taxpayers to pay for this, and it's for that type of purpose, we have to convince them that's what we're doing, and I'd support that. But if it's for fluff, you know, then people are going to say no. So we have to make sure we get that information out, and we have a good solid analysis, and I really want to commend you for getting this data out. We didn't ask you for it, not really, so this is great.
But he needs us to be able to work our budget out.